Hello, everyone. It's Jesus McDonald here. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a few seconds to subscribe because I don't want you to miss out on any valuable content around entrepreneurship, around business, and around marketing. And for those that have been listening to our show for some time now, thank you for being a loyal listener. And please leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Also, as a reminder, for podcast interviews like this one, you can also watch the video version of these interviews on my YouTube channel. Just search Jesus McDonald on YouTube and you'll find those videos there. Now, today, my guest is Justin Brown. Justin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Jesus, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I want to start by giving our listeners and viewers a short bio of who you are, just to give more context, and then we'll dive right into some of the questions that I have for you.
Sounds good.
Nice. Now, for those that don't know Justin Brown, Justin is the co-founder of Motion, which helps B2B technology companies strike up genuine conversations with the exact people they want to do business with. Motion was founded by Tristan Pellegrino and Justin Brown. Tristan's early career began with consulting, working for large firms such as Oracle and IBM. During his early years, Tristan learned how much of a challenge it was to articulate the value of technology. Whether it was creating a proposal or delivering a sales presentation, communicating the benefits of technology was hard. So he decided to get an MBA in marketing and develop a skill set to overcome these types of challenges. On the other hand, Justin's career has been spent working with B2B tech companies in both sales and marketing. Justin has helped launch modern sales programs and several technology companies, both from a recruiting and infrastructure and operations standpoint. In 2015, Justin joined forces with Tristan at one of the fastest growing production companies in the country. Tristan was the co-founder of the video production company. Their efforts built a marketing and sales program that helped catapult the company to the Inc. 5000 list for the first time. In 2016, Tristan sold his shares to the production company to his partner, and shortly thereafter, Tristan and Justin launched Motion. Now, the two professionals are able to combine firsthand experience in technology, marketing, and sales to help tech companies develop the best podcast in their space. Justin, thank you again for joining the show, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's funny to hear your story told by somebody else.
You're not the first that told me that either. It's like, oh, I'm just going to sit there and I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, exactly. I might have to go back and refresh some of my that's the copy from our About Us page. But
Nice.
no, good to be here. It is fun to hear, somebody else tell your story a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everyone has a story. So why not use podcasting, right?
Yeah, exactly. For us, as you heard in that bio, we were heavily in video production. I started my career doing something completely different. I was a recruiter for tech companies, so I was helping to build sales teams,
Hmm.
whether that was SDRs or closing reps, and even up to the director and VP level.
Nice.
And I was actually recruiting for my business partner to find his head of sales about 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
And that was when I decided, hey, you know what, I can do this job. And we started working together, and years later, here we are. We own a podcast agency. It's a lot of fun.
I love it. And that's what's been trending for a while now is podcasting. So that's awesome. Now, a question that I have for you, and it kind of goes in line with what we're talking about because every entrepreneur has their story, right? What inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you talk to my parents, they'd probably tell you that I was always destined to be an entrepreneur because I never liked to listen to what I was told, or very much liked asking why I had to do things. So early in my career, when I told my folks that I think I wanted to work for myself, I think
Mm,
their response was like, Duh. We've known that you didn't want to have a boss since you were little, but it started out when I was in college. I swear I'm a good person. Just maybe some infrastructure of life didn't fit me well. But in college, I wasn't a great student. Didn't have the best GPA, but I really liked being involved in campus activities. And I ended up getting a job working for the student newspaper, and then
Mm.
I became the editor in chief of the newspaper where I was running it. And that was my first experience like running a staff. I had a staff of 40 writers, an editorial board of 11 folks who reported to
Wow.
me. And I liked that a lot. And so then I get into the professional world. Quickly, I become a manager in my first job. And then, as I said, that team I'm managing, eventually I then go head up sales for my current business partner's first venture. Always kind of knowing that I was working at these professional services companies, almost like soaking up information for how I would do it when I did it myself.
Mm.
Um, and I knew that pretty early on that I wasn't going to last long. Um, be having someone else as my boss. But
Hmm.
my current business partner and I, we really saw eye to eye. He was, he was the owner of the company. I was the head of sales, and we just really worked well together. And as you mentioned, we took that company into the Inc. 5000. We left the following year because we were big on growth. His business partner at the time wanted to be more of a boutique firm, which is great, to each their own, but we wanted to grow. So then we ventured out, started Motion, and 4 years later, here we are, and we've changed industries, we've changed what we do for reasons, and I think we'll get into that today. But yeah, I mean, I kind of always knew it was always in my blood that I wanted to be able to kind of live and die by my own decisions,
Hmm.
and put faith in myself to be able to be successful.
That's awesome, and it's inspiring. The story too. A lot. One thing that I've learned from a lot of entrepreneurs is um, the reward is bigger. It's a higher risk, but the reward is bigger, and they usually, I don't know the right word, but get tired of like building other people's businesses, so they start building their own businesses, which kind of resonates with what you're saying.
Yeah, I got tired fast. I started at this company as my first job, and there were about 20 people when I started, and when I left, they had become 4 times in the Inc. 5000. I
Hmm.
had grown my own department from scratch. There was no recruiting department. That was my first in the professional world. That was like my first experience of growing something. They gave me as a 24-year-old my own department, and I grew that from one person to 11 people. And
Mm.
then you kind of look at it and you're like, I could. Now, could I have done it for myself? They gave me the infrastructure and everything that comes
Right.
along with working for someone else, but they actually had me working off of a P&L. So I was basically paying them and hiring my own employees within their firm. So I got a lot of really good experience at like 24 years old.
Hmm.
Um, and so from there, I kind of knew. I was like, okay, I was able to do this. I was following what my profit and loss was, how much salaries are, things like that. And I kind of had a lot of faith from there, that I was going to be able to do it. But um, you get tired of doing it for someone else because you're just looking at it and you're like, no matter how great this is, it's still not mine.
Right. I can relate with that, definitely. Working for other companies. Now, why did you pick podcasting services? Why not any other type of services?
Well, it was other types of services. So things evolve, right? So we
Mm.
leave this video production company where we're in a project based environment, and I'm in sales, and life is hard. We're growing, we're adding staff members, and every month is a race to sell more video projects because people aren't recurring clients. I mean, maybe they'll come back for additional projects, but I'm always back against the wall to make payroll.
Right.
Um, and we got tired. We got tired of that grind. And so we decided to shift into becoming your full service agency, right? Where we'll do anything. We'll write blog posts, we'll do your video projects, we'll create infographics, we'll help you with your social media, we'll help set up ad campaigns, whatever it may be. And the way that we wanted to differentiate ourselves when doing that, because there's so many people who are agencies, right?
Right.
Everyone, I mean, anybody can be an agency if someone will buy from you. And so we thought, okay, who do we like working with? My business partner and I both like working with B2B tech. And so we were like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start a podcast, and that'll be our differentiator, right? So we run this podcast. We talk to CMOs all day in tech. We know it better than any other agency out there because we're having hundreds of conversations on our podcast, which is called Tech
Mhm.
Qualified, by the way. And so we start doing this podcast and realize that all of the systems that we have in place for video production translate incredibly to this. I mean, we've been cutting
Yeah.
video and audio, and now we're saying, okay, let's cut some audio, let's put some video assets with it. We have writing services in house. We can do an entire suite of services around podcasting, and oh, by the way, we love the medium. And
Hmm.
so we decided, screw doing, let's not be everything for everyone. Let's niche down, which is terrifying, by the way, as an entrepreneur, because you think, oh my God, no one's ever going to buy from me again because I'm only going to speak to this niche audience. And it's the complete
Right.
other way, which we can talk about if you want. But you find out that when you talk to a specific audience, all of a sudden you get ears and people care. So yeah, over time we transitioned and we changed, and we went from this video production company to this full service agency, way down into podcasting for B2B tech companies with marketing teams of 1 to 5. And I've had more people who are interested in what we're doing now than I ever have in my life, because I
That's
actually
awesome.
speak to a specific audience and people care about what it is that we do.
Right. And yeah, I do like talking about the specific niche because I think a lot of entrepreneurs they get desperate, and a lot of agencies get desperate, and they're like, "Sure, we'll take anything right now." Right. But when you have a specific niche, I like to call it what's your ideal client, right? And it's not like, oh, my ideal client is everyone. I was like, no, everyone's not your favorite. Let's be real. What is your favorite client? And I change it to favorite, from ideal to favorite, because then it starts becoming of that niche that keeps getting closer. Like I want to know your annual sales volume. I want to know um, your favorite client's annual sales volume. What's the industry? What's the company size? Like I want to get specific and detailed as possible.
Yeah, for sure. So like I mentioned, our ICP or favorite client or whatever it may be is usually a CMO or head of marketing at a B2B technology company, lots of times SaaS, but we work with a few different types of tech companies. And they've got a marketing team of 1 to 5.
Hmm.
We do work with some solo CMOs. A lot of times we're going to be more successful if there's like 1 or 2 others. And the way that we try to frame it up of why we work well with those folks is with a podcast. The way that we do it, at least, you get a lot of things out of it. So for every episode that we create, we send over 8 to 10 assets. Now, if we work with a CEO of a company who is like a solopreneur or 1 or 2
Hmm.
other folks, those 8 to 10 assets are probably going to be too much for that person to do something with. They have their full-time job, and for them to promote 8 to 10, a blog post, as well as a couple of videos, as well as the episode itself. I'm not saying
Right.
it's not a fit, and we do have those folks, but that's not really what our favorite customer is. So our favorite customer is someone who's gonna, what we like to say is, right now that person is spending their time making content,
Hmm.
and we want to have them spend their time making content work for them. So someone who has the bandwidth, whether it's them or someone on their team, to take those 8 to 10 assets either every week or every other week and focus on making them work for them. And that's what we've seen. And then if you look at bigger than 1 to 5 marketing teams, a lot of times those people are going to have that stuff in house, where maybe they've got a video production person in house, and they've got a 2-person creative team and a writer. They're going to be
Right.
like, well, Justin, I don't know why I need your service then. Maybe I just want 1 or 2 things out of your service. And that's not really the value of my service. The value of my service is that you spend 30 to 60 minutes recording this episode, and then we create almost your entire, or in some cases, your entire content marketing pipeline out of those episodes. And so that's really where we fit well, is where people are leaning on us as their content marketing. And this was a big conversation that we had when we were going through niching down and trying to speak to people, was, having to get away, because we believe that the way that we operate, you're almost getting your entire content marketing pipeline out of these episodes. But we decided that we were going to be a podcast agency, and people were going to see what we do and realize that that speaks to them, versus positioning ourselves as a content marketing agency and saying that we get there through podcast. So, there are concessions that need to be made. And we went through an entire story brand exercise with a verified story brand consultant, some tough conversations, but yeah, that's where we landed, and it's been great. I mean, basically people are like, hey, I'm thinking about maybe doing a podcast, and then they see everything that can come out of it and they get excited, versus going the other direction. So I'm not sure if that answers your question about favorite client, but that's generally what we look for.
No, it does. And then what I was also thinking about, because what's also great about you and your partner is that you guys have a video production background experience. Not a lot of agencies have that. And why that's awesome is because even though podcasting is audio only, they're starting to do video with them, right? And what I'm starting to see is like that's becoming the trend. Everyone's starting to do video with audio, chop it up, repurpose, do all that, right? So the cool thing is, and I don't know if you offer the video side of it too, but the cool thing is you guys have the experience of video production. You guys know your stuff, where other people are willing to, let me see you as a guinea pig. I'll try it out. Nobody wants to be the guinea pig, right?
Between my business partner and me, we have executed on probably over somewhere around 10,000 plus video projects in our careers. And I like to say we were forged in the fires of video production, which I find to be the most hellish piece of content to create. And that is from not only the actual creation of video, you've got your video, you've got audio, you've got input from different people in an organization. You've got, if you're filming, which was about 50% of our work for 3 years, where we would, show up full camera crew, shooting on the Red with the FS7. I mean, I can get into the nerdy stuff there, but and making sure you don't miss big moments, and that the audio is good and you have one chance to capture it. There's no like, hey, Jesus, do you mind if I take that question over again? If you're at a conference or at an event or something along those lines, we did the hardest content, in my opinion, that there is to create. And now with podcasting, what we've been able to do is turn a lot of those lessons learned into premium video content that's coming out of podcasts. So we just recently released our video plans, and we were slow to release them by design, because we did not want to release something that was what everybody else was doing. So if you go and see any of our video clients and the work that we're doing with them, I mean, we're producing premium video in terms of, animation and what have you, being created in After Effects that are going along with the video. I mean, nobody's out there doing that. And the only reason that we know how to do that, and it's not me, but it's our team knows how to do that, is because we had times where we had 70 active video projects at a time. These people were working on tons of stuff. Now I've got, 50 or whatever podcasts that we're working on. And it's a little bit easier. It's a slower, it's not slower in terms of turnaround time, but it's slower and easier in terms of the creation because the content is already made. There's not as much planning that goes into it. So it's a really nice medium for us. And what you'll see is, like you said, a lot of these podcast agencies are building up to video. We built down from video into podcast, but we never got rid of those skills. We kept all of those people with us that are doing those things in After Effects and doing the creative process on the back end. So we have a lot of these technical capabilities still available to our clients.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's an interesting strategy. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because we talked about ideal client, we talked about, even listeners that are tuning into the show, maybe watching it on YouTube or on their favorite podcasting app, they're marketing professionals, CMOs, VP of marketing, director of marketing, senior marketing managers, anything that has marketing in the title, right? And then we have entrepreneurs too, and small business owners that also tune in to the show. And one of the things that a lot of businesses are doing, especially in the B2B space, is creating a podcast to brand themselves, or both, or creating a podcast channel or show for the business itself. And they do a great job, brand awareness, generate leads, all that stuff, right? There's still some that are on the fence. And I was thinking this would be a great opportunity to even hear of a client success story that you might have, because you provide specific podcasting services, right? And those that are on the fence, I would love to hear a client success story, and was wondering if you had a client success story that you could share with our listeners.
Yeah, I do. So Jen Kern runs Restaurants Reinvented. It's a podcast for CMOs at restaurants. She does a phenomenal job and has had on brands that you've heard of, from Kava to Dunkin' Donuts to a handful of others that I'm sure I'm missing off the top of my head. But she does a great job with her podcast, and I had her on my podcast. And
nice.
When I asked her if she would be open to, because she's great, she's a speaker, she spoke at Inbound, HubSpot's big marketing event. Jen is just someone who needs to have a podcast, basically, and I recommend you go check her out. But when I asked her about podcasts and if she'd be open to talking about doing one, she told me she doesn't listen to podcasts, so she doesn't know why she would do a podcast. And I said, but Jen, you don't listen to podcasts because you should be hosting one. You don't want to listen to what other people have to say on a podcast, but I bet you're going to be great at podcasts. And the irony is she actually loves podcasts. Now, she consumes more podcasts than anyone I know, other than probably my business partner and me, because she's always working at getting better, because everything Jen does, she wants to be the best at. But so she goes from, I don't listen to podcasts, I don't want to do a podcast, to, okay, I'll give you a chance, to then COVID happens and the restaurant industry gets hit hard. And so Jen's got to get, crafty with what she's going to do with her content marketing budget. And she actually doubled and tripled down into podcasting because she realized how much value she gets out of it. And she, needed to get the most value for her marketing dollar, because just uncertain times, and right. People aren't throwing around money, especially in spaces that have been hit hard. And her podcast is now a weekly podcast. We went from 2 times a month to 3 times a month to now 4 times a month.
Wow.
And she's just rocking it. And her guests are fantastic. She gets, kudos from the CEO. And if you go to our website, and I'm not trying to sell anybody anything in saying that, but if you go to our website, we say, our goal is to make make marketers superheroes. And we believe that's what a podcast does, is all of a sudden the people in your organization are walking around, obviously with COVID, giving, figurative pats on the back, but like, hey, I loved that episode that you put out. Like, really, you become not only a superhero in your space,
Hmm.
but also at your company. And it's nice. Like, it's nice as a marketer or a salesperson to be noticed by the CEO, or not even the CEO, like the CTO or head of product, or somebody who doesn't usually ever interact with marketing or does very little, coming up
Hmm.
and being like, "Hey, I heard that podcast you did with Duncan. That was awesome."
Nice.
Like, that was just
Yeah.
like, it was really fun to hear about you all talk. And then, our product got brought into it a little bit, into the conversation, and how Dunkin' Donuts is using Q, and the head of product is the one who put all of that together to create the product that Dunkin' Donuts is using. So they're kind of getting accolades, and everybody's just viewing your brand in a very positive light, when historically it's like, oh, I did a co-branded blog post or newsletter with Duncan, and people are like, that's cool. Versus like,
Yeah.
you have someone on for, like the CMO of this brand that you recognize, talking about how they are coping with COVID and your technology that the CTO has helped put together to create, to
Hmm.
help them get through this tough time. Like, those are pretty powerful stories. And I don't know if there's a lot of other mediums outside of video where you're going to get that kind of emotional connection throughout your space, and
Hmm.
then throughout your company with the leaders there, and really just giving marketing a loud voice.
Right. And you touched on a few valuable pointers there. Is that when you do a blog article, you're right. And the reason why I laughed it was because I think of it the same way. When I read an article, I'm like, gosh, it's boring. It's B2B lingo. And it's just boring, super professional. Not that I'm not professional, but it's just super professional. But then when I hear a podcast, I'm like, this is a human.
Mhm.
I relate to the emotions, the struggles, the pains, the growing pains that they go through. Um, I resonate with this person a lot more. I'm more influenced by this person than reading a blog post that has a ton of ads on the left sidebar, So I really love that you mentioned that, because that really separates blogging, articles, and video podcasting, right? So that's good stuff right there. Another thing I wanted to ask is some advice. Do you have any advice for B2B tech marketers that want more leads from podcasting?
Yeah. So we have 5 different buckets of people that you can bring onto your podcast. You've got customers, internal subject matter experts. So like that CTO who you don't want to ask to write something for you because he or she doesn't want to do that, and that. So bringing on smart people in your organization to talk about what's going on in the space, partners and industry influencers. And then there is, the opportunity. I mentioned, I had Jen onto my podcast, and then she ended up becoming a client of mine. So, you do have the opportunity to reach out to people who are either maybe target accounts, or people that you'd like to work with or to establish a relationship with. So you can drive leads there. And then, for me, the biggest source of leads that we've gotten from our podcast and from our content is just really establishing, and you mentioned, Jesus, the human element of creating content. And for us, our LinkedIn presence has helped a lot. About 3 months ago, I really started to ramp up my activity on LinkedIn, posting daily, commenting left and right on all of the
Right.
people in my space. And it's scary at first. I put out posts that got no engagement, no interaction, and you feel like other people
Mhm.
are seeing that, basically you look like you don't know anybody or whatever. So it's scary to write stuff. But over time, we've really, my business partner and I have really established voices for ourselves on LinkedIn, and by publishing content, whether it's snippets from our podcast or conversations that we're having. I'm going to post this once it's ready. Trying to show that we have a voice out there that's also attracted potential customers. So, for me, what really helped me to get my voice was the podcast. I was able to lean on bringing on very insightful people who I looked up to, who, as you'll see, people are pretty receptive to coming on a podcast.
Right.
It's a fun break in your day. And then just trying to have outlets to, expose that you are talking to these folks and that you have something to offer, and people over time will get interested. So you can go that kind of direct response, which is bringing prospects on at target accounts and trying to establish relationships. And then there's the softer approach, which is, kind of putting out your content out there from, an organic thought leadership perspective, and getting people to be interested in what it is that you have to say. So, for us, it's been those two things. There's a lot that you can also do with, retargeting and ads and driving people to your site or to consume your content through advertising, which is another big thing
Right.
with the podcast medium, is getting people to, drive traffic through engaging with your podcast instead of with that ebook or with, contact forms or what have you. So there's a lot that you can do. And then there's a lot that you can't track. And there are people who are downloading your podcast and listening to it. You don't even know it, who eventually
Right.
will convert, and you'll find out about that they've been listening for, 6 months and you didn't even know. And those are really fun conversations to have as well when you do find that out.
Right. Yeah, I had a few people that reached out to me on email and told me, hey, this one episode was fire. And they just kept talking about it. And at first I thought it was spam because
Mhm.
I get so much emails, right? You can probably relate. And one of the things was it ended up becoming someone that a CMO that wanted to, jump on the show. And from there, we ended up talking about services, right? And I've also have had guests where kind of like you, Justin, where you jump on the show, you tell me everything about your business, Motion, the services you provide, which honestly, I don't know a lot of businesses that offer podcasting services. I'm sure there's a lot out there, but you're the first one on the show. So there you go. And to me, it's like I'm learning more about Justin and his business and what differentiates Justin from other companies. So when an entrepreneur comes to me and is talking about wants to get into podcasting services, right? I'm thinking of Justin. I'm going to refer business to Justin. And that's a perfect way to get referrals. And I've seen that very effective, on both ends, either if I'm sending you, Justin, referrals or you're sending me referrals. Sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, you've had people that have joined the show as your guest and they end up becoming your customers.
Yep.
So to me, it's just a big, fat business networking opportunity. It's the way I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to your point, I get, I don't know, 20 emails a day or LinkedIn messages about someone trying to sell me an IT services plan. And I'm like, I work at home, like
Yeah.
I'm a small business owner. But you sent me a note, and maybe it was custom written for me. Maybe it was not that custom and you send it to business owners, but it doesn't matter. You said, hey, I noticed your background and I was wondering if you want to come on my podcast. Here's the link to my podcast. It's a
Mhm.
legit, for real podcast. And I responded within 5 minutes,
You
maybe
responded
2
quickly.
minutes.
Right.
Yeah, because I got it. I was on my phone. It was the end of my, toward the end of my workday. I think you're West Coast, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so
California.
it was toward the end of my workday, and I'm on my phone, kind of just like, winding down, and I see the message pop up, and I read it because I read every message that comes to me. You
Nice.
never know, especially when you're a small business owner like I am. I'm
Yeah, you never know.
not missing leads, okay? So I got to
Yeah.
read everything, and you see that, And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And that's how people will be for your podcast. You're providing something to them for their time, and people are excited about it. We're all dealing with the same thing, kind of, stuck inside, not as stuck inside as we were maybe 8 months ago, although we
Hmm.
probably should be. But people are looking to do something that's outside of the same things that they do every day. And it's a nice medium. It's fun. You get to interact with people. You get some content out of it. You feel good because you
Right.
get to talk about yourself. It's a great tool for businesses to use to engage with the people in their space. Again, whether that is people who you just want to talk to, like customers or industry influencers and people
Hmm.
or people you don't, in potential customers and prospects and target accounts and what
Right.
have you. So, there's a lot you can do with it, and it's a fantastic networking tool.
Yeah. And last thing I would add on to this would be for those just listening is some context around me reaching out to Justin and a true story on how effective podcasting is. Justin is, I was, I guess we have mutual connections. We're both pretty heavy on LinkedIn and we spend a lot of time there. And I guess one of our mutual connections ended up liking, commenting, everything like that, where your video or snippet or short clip, whatever, it's all the same lingo, ended up in my newsfeed. And I started watching it. I was like, this is awesome. I think I liked a few of them. And then I saw another friend of mine started commenting on yours. I was like, who's this Justin guy now? And then I started seeing, I think I requested to connect with you and I said, hey, I noticed we follow the same person. Would love to connect on LinkedIn, which is awesome because we had a lot of mutual connections already. So I started following your content. I started learning a lot about your content. And then the thing that I keep hearing is podcasting, podcasting, podcast. If you're not doing podcasting, you're behind the eight ball. Podcasting, right? And I saw that you were doing it as a service where I did not see that before from anyone. Everyone just says, I'm utilizing podcasting, right? But to someone that says, hey, I actually offer B2B companies, marketers in the tech software industry, this is what I do. And the people that you had on, so you have really good stuff, is what I'm trying to say. And it got me, it hooked me. So there you go. You didn't even know you were doing sales. There you go.
No, yeah, and and coming from a pretty heavy sales background, it's been a lot of fun for me to not have to be as salesy and to
Hmm.
just start
Totally.
like interacting with people. And this has been the beauty of not having to be on project based work. And now we have retainers, and so I'm like, I know I'll eat next month, and the month after, and the month after
Yeah.
that. And so I don't need to sell to everybody that I talk to. And I can be a little bit more myself. And just, when people ask what I do, I tell them, but I'm not always trying to set next steps. And that's been
Mm,
a lot of fun with the podcast, is that I can have people on, have these engaging conversations. They know what I do, I know what they do. And when it makes sense, it makes sense. And I'm always top of mind by staying active on LinkedIn, staying in people's feeds so they continue to see me, hear from
right.
me. I have retargeting ads running, so they go to my website and they see my face. My business partner made these great ads that have my face all over the web. So if you're on ESPN or CNN or whatever, you're going to see
I love it.
me like this. But yeah, just trying to stay in front of people without having to hard sell them. And the podcast makes it a lot of fun to just be able to engage and network without having to do that. But at the same time, still making sure that you get in front of people.
All right. Now, last question is how do you manage it all? I mean, you're doing everything as an entrepreneur, podcasting services. I mean, you're wearing multiple hats, right? And you're posting on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So, my business partner and I, the way that we actually met, well, we met because I was working. I was trying to recruit for him, and I did. And the first person that he hired that I surfaced for him failed at the job. And the way I basically landed the job was that. I went in and I presented to his business partner at the time, their head of operations, and my business partner, so three people. And I presented to them about this system called EOS. It's the
Hmm.
Entrepreneurial Operating System developed by Gino Wickman. And I talked to them about this book Traction, and they ended up bringing in an EOS implementer. And the whole idea behind EOS is having vision and then having accountability. And so my business partner and I have continued to follow that kind of system for splitting up tasks. And so we have a very specific um, task delineation within the business. I handle sales, he handles marketing. We're both, and just because you're accountable to something doesn't mean you don't work in the other thing. So we're both doing marketing, we're both doing sales, but it's who's accountable for what. You know, I handle all of customer success. So customers have questions, they need help, they want to give me a hard time about something, whatever it may be, that comes to me. Then he handles delivery. So the back end, the creating of all of these assets, the working with the people making video, the writers, the people creating. He deals with that. So he doesn't have to worry about answering a question from a client and then going back into the lab and taking care of it and then going back and reaching back
Hmm.
out to the client. Everything is split up very specifically so that whenever something comes in, a new opportunity comes in, that goes to me. We want to get a newsletter out, that goes to him because that's marketing.
Right.
And so that's how we balance everything. What we found is when you don't have a clear delineation of accountability, it makes it very hard, very confusing, very foggy. And like you said, then everybody's wearing a lot of hats and it can make your life very difficult. At this point, you know, we have meetings every week where, you know, we track specific scorecard elements based on the departments that we're in charge of. And it's not that bad.
Hmm.
And I highly recommend reading the book Traction for anyone who's an entrepreneur. It will give you some clarity in terms of, you know, whether or not your business does have accountability. And if it doesn't, you know, maybe there are some things that you need to work on. But for us, that's been really, really important. And it helps us too when something goes wrong.
Hmm.
You know, sometimes you do need to point a finger, and everybody takes, you know, responsibility, but in terms of who's accountable when something happens, you're able to say, hey, Justin, that's your job. So a client reached out, they're pissed off, that's your job to go handle that.
Hmm.
Or a client says, hey, I need this changed, and then I say, hey, Tristan, you know, that's your job to get this fixed. And so that's how we do it all. And for us, it's helped to, you know, we're in a service-based business, and
Right.
so if you don't have accountability, you can get underwater very quickly, and we do everything in our power to avoid that.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are listening, and I keep saying that because it's entrepreneurs and marketing professionals, and they have never started a podcast and they would like to get in touch with you, or if they have a podcast and maybe they're not seeing the results that they're looking for, how can they get in contact with Justin Brown?
Yeah, for sure. You can go to our website, motionagency.io. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's linkedin.com/, Justin Brown Motion. Also, if you have a podcast or you're thinking about launching a podcast, you can go to our website and we have a build a podcast plan page that goes through everything from ideal guest profiles to who would host it to equipment that you need. And we're actually turning that into a video series here in the new year. Jesus, you mentioned that you follow me. I've been
Hmm.
running this series. It's hashtag podcasts in motion, where myself or my business partner every day break down a specific piece of the podcast puzzle. We're doing about a 60-part series, and those are all going to get turned into videos. So in real time, you're actually watching us write the scripts and publish them each day onto LinkedIn. And for us, it's been a
That's
lot of
awesome.
fun. We're about 2/3 of the way done. So once we finish with the scripts, we'll go into production, record the videos, and then we'll have a video course out there as well.
Nice. Well, Justin, you're awesome. I love what you guys are doing and keep doing what you guys do best. All right.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You have a good one.
You too.